Hello, I'm Bernard Norcott-Mahany. I work at the Blueford branch of the Kansas City Public Library. September 29th is National Silent Film Day. And I'm a big fan of silent film. I think I might be able to say that I probably know more about silent films than anyone else in the Kansas City Public Library. There may be some other takers, but I know a fair amount. And so I thought I would recommend 10 silent films. And these are sort of films, most of these films you may not have heard of, some maybe you did, but these are not like the 10 greatest or anything like that. But they are all very good films. And I'll be doing these in chronological order. So, and one other thing to think of is silent movies were truly international movies because the titles, that had the dialogue, those could be translated into any language you wanted. So since there was no actual spoken dialogue, you didn't have to worry about whether people understood or not. So you did have a truly international cinema in the silent period, and that, of course, fell apart when sound came in. So first of all is an Italian movie from 1914 called Kimberia. Now, all of these films you can get through the Kansas City Public Library. We have them in the catalog. It's a 1914 film that deals with ancient Rome and ancient Roman history, as do a lot of Italian silent films. In the teens, 19 teens, Italy was really sort of the foremost film place in the world. So for 1914, if you see this film, it's amazing some of the shots that they get in the film. The next film is an American film. It's a Buster Keaton film called Our Hospitality. And in the library's copy of this, it's paired with a shorter Keaton feature called Sherlock Jr. Our Hospitality comes from 1923. It basically tells the Hatfield McCoy story in a comic way. So Buster Keaton plays a member of one of those two families. He falls in love with a woman with the other family. He's invited to their home, and then when they find out who he is, of course, they're all trying to kill him, but of course hospitality forbids that they actually kill him on the property. The film was also something of an in-joke because Keaton was married into the Talmadge family, which was a sort of acting family, and he was considered, despite his genius as a comic actor, he was considered sort of like the poor cousin, and he was not well treated by the Talmadges. So this idea of sort of like this internecine thing going on probably struck pretty close to home. But Our Hospitality is a blast, and Sherlock Jr. arguably is even better. It's also shorter, so you can get those 2 for 1, and they're both great. The next film is another American film by John Ford. This comes from 1924, called The Iron Horse. It tells the story of the Transatlantic Railroad. That's basically it. It was, the film was made again in the sound era. Both films are quite good. This is an early John Ford film, but it has all of the stuff that you find in Ford westerns later. So it's a lot of fun. Some of it may not be politically correct, since, of course, the treatment of Native peoples, Hollywood does not do well by the Native peoples, really up until the modern era. The next is a German film by Fritz Lang called, and it's actually 2 films, called Die Nibelungen. So there's the Die Nibelungen, which is the first part. Sometimes it's called Siegfried, and the second part is called Kriemhild's Revenge. This is based on the medieval German epic about the Nibelungen, and is not actually based on the Wagnerian opera cycle, the Ring cycle. It's a different story. Among other things, we get Attila the Hun in the second part of this. But it's an amazing film. It's amazing to watch. The recreation of this medieval sort of like Germanic hero world for 1924 is quite impressive. Of course, Lang, in a couple years is going to make Metropolis, which is this amazing science fiction film. So Lang I'm not sure that Lang made a bad movie, and just about every movie he made was a great movie. We're coming back to America for 1925, The Freshman. This is a film that stars Harold Lloyd, whom you see right there. Harold Lloyd is known mainly for films where he's hanging from buildings or other sort of like what were called thrill comedies. This is not that. He plays a young man who's going to college, and what he wants to be a football star. And of course, he's sort of a klutz. He has all the heart to play football, but he doesn't really have the physical ability. Lots of great jokes, including one where his tuxedo that he has, there are some threads, and as those threads get pulled, he loses various parts of his clothes on the dance floor at the student mixer at the beginning of the year. It's a great film. Of course, it has the great football game at the end where, not surprisingly, I don't think this is really a spoiler alert, Harold Lloyd will, of course, be the hero of the game. Another American film from 1926 is Douglas Fairbanks in The Black Pirate. This is a pirate film, and Douglas Fairbanks was an amazingly physical actor, and he did all of his own stunts, and some of them are quite impressive. There's one stunt here where he basically goes from the top of a ship, the top mast, to the deck by basically putting a knife into a sail and then basically following the knife down. And no doubt there was some sort of harness to help him, but still, it's an amazing. It looks amazing. It's almost like watching athletic ballet, the way Douglas Fairbanks moves. He played Zorro. He played other sort of heroes. One of the things about this film is a color film. By the mid-20s, they had already developed two-color Technicolor process. The full Technicolor that you see like in Wizard of Oz or Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, those films were three-color. And so they used three colors to make all of the colors of the rainbow. Two-color Technicolor is missing something. So when you see it, it's clearly color, but there are certain colors that really aren't there. You don't see them because they really needed that third. But still, it's well worth watching. It's a lot of fun, and it's nice to sort of see a dramatic action figure, not just the comedians doing all the action. Then we move on to King of Kings, which comes from 1927. This is by Cecil B. DeMille, the same Cecil B. DeMille who later made the Ten Commandments. He made the Ten Commandments as a silent film. He also made the Ten Commandments as a sound film. King of Kings, I'm not sure that he did the sound version of King of Kings, but he certainly did the silent version. It tells the story of Christ. So it's a Christian sort of based film. Cecil B. DeMille did biblical epic well. And this is no exception to that. It's well worth watching. And now we move to France with a film called The Italian Straw Hat. This is from 1928. It was directed by René Clair, and it's a nice light comedy. The basic premise is there's this guy, he's going to get married, but on the way to getting married, something happens to this straw hat of this like tough guy. So he has a boat or that a horse eats, and the groom is sort of blamed for this, and he has to somehow get the money to pay the guy back or else. And so he's worried about all of this on his wedding day. And it's basically a big comedy of errors. It's brilliantly directed. René Clair, one of the greatest of French directors, and well worth your time. I couldn't leave out Chaplin. Of the silent films, Circus, The Circus might be the one that people don't know as well. This is from 1928. By 1928, things were already moving into sound. So they were still largely shooting silent films, but The Jazz Singer had come out. There was a move towards making more and more sound films. Chaplin resisted that. But one of the things that this film did allow him to do is it allowed him to create the musical score which is included. So he wrote the music for this, which would have been part of the film. So it's the silent film as far as the action, no one's speaking, but you do have sound. This score that was written for the film, as opposed to just someone playing some tunes on a piano or an organ, which was more typical of silent films. He plays his tramp character. The tramp character ends up in this circus where he basically gets in the way of some act. Right, there's some act going on, and then he gets in, and he clumsily gets in, and of course, people think it's part of the act. His basically ruining this other act. He's a great comic hit, and so he becomes part of the circus. He falls in love. Of course, this is the tramp character, and the tramp basically can love, but he can't win his love usually. So it's a melancholy film, but it's a beautiful film and well worth your seeing, because you've probably seen The Gold Rush, you've probably seen City Lights or Modern Times, his other sort of really big silent films. Give The Circus a shot. And then the last film, the last of the 10, is a Japanese film by Yasujiro Ozu called I Was Born But. And Ozu had a bunch of films called I Was Blank But. I graduated but. I got a job but. I was born but. So this is one of those films. It is a comic film. It is about the battle of the generations. There are two young boys. Their father is a Japanese salaryman. He basically goes, he works his 9-to-5 job. He collects his paycheck. But they, of course, think he's a big man. It turns out he's not. And when they see the father interacting with the boss, of course, he has to be very deferential to the boss. They're, of course, horrified because they thought their dad was this, big shot, and in fact, he's not. So there's some disappointment and bittersweet quality about it, but it's a beautiful film. One disclaimer I have to put in here: I love Yasujiro Ozu. I love every film that I've seen of his. He continued making films into the sound period. Now this is 1932. It's already the sound period, but in Japan they didn't start making sound movies till 1936, and the reason was the way it worked in Japan is there were these group called benshi. That was the name of the role. They worked in these theaters that would be showing the movies, and what they did is they would read the titles because not everyone could read. And they would also provide like commentary on the film, right? So they might, like a guy might be doing something. Go, why is he doing that? Hey, he can't do that, can he? What do you think? The audience would, respond. So he interacts with the film, but he also sort of comments on the film and he reads the titles. Those guys were all unionized, and once sound came in, there was no need for them, and so of course all of those people lost their jobs. And so Japan resisted for a long time because of the benshi. I've never seen a film with a benshi, doing that commentary. I would love to. There are some theaters in California apparently where they do this, and they've resurrected it in Japan. But it must be sort of a blast. Of course, you would have to know Japanese, which I don't, so there would be that problem. But I love Ozu. Ozu's films are quiet. They're somewhat slow moving, so American audiences don't always like them. They are almost meditative, and they are just beautiful. They are just beautiful. So, this film, I Was Born But, can be found in a collection that the library has called Three Silent Comedies by Ozu. So just look up Yasujiro Ozu. Ozu is the last name. And you can find what the library has of him. Any of the films are great, but if you're looking for silent films, I Was Born But is probably the most accessible. And that was actually remade by Ozu as a sound film called Ohio, which is one of the Japanese ways of saying good morning. And that one also deals with the two kids. They're upset with their parents because what they want is they want a television set because they want to watch sumo wrestling on TV, but they don't have a TV set, so they have to go to the neighbor's house to watch, and they're really upset, and they basically go on strike to get the TV. But it's the same basic plot as the other, and that's also beautiful. So enjoy National Silent Film Day. If you haven't watched any silent films, watch some. The library, as I said, has all these ones that I mentioned, but the library also has you can get them through streaming services like Hoopla or Canopy, which the library subscribes to, and if you go on YouTube, you can find a bunch of silent films. And if you think, gee, these longer silent films are too much, look at some shorts. There are lots of 1 and 2 reel comedies by Chaplin and by Buster Keaton, and even by Harold Lloyd. You can certainly look at those, and they're very accessible. So if you haven't seen any silent films, definitely do something. I mean, it was an art form unto itself, and mercifully, we have a boatload of it. We've lost more than we have. I mean, I think we've lost more than 50%, but we still have a gigantic chunk of silent film from all around the world. So, happy watching.